Hello class, so what we're going to do is talk about Adobe Camera Raw. Now Adobe Camera Raw is a program that ultimately opens up when you try to open a RAW file right into Photoshop and bypass Capture One. Now, once upon a time, Adobe had to create a way to actually edit RAW files, and ultimately this is what the program looks like. So I'm just going to bring over the sample images folder this week. And I provided a RAW file for you guys to sort of just take a peek and ultimately look at what Camera Raw does. Um, just please note, you cannot open up EIPs into Camera Raw. Photoshop won't know what to do with that. So if you ever need to do this for whatever reason, you have to unpack an EIP file, grab the raw file. So here's a CR2 file. I'm going to go ahead and just drag this over on top of Photoshop. If you had Photoshop open, you could simply go to File, Open, or you could also just right-click on that raw file, go to Open with Photoshop. Different ways to open the same file. What'll happen is Photoshop will open, and this pops up here. So this window here, I'm just gonna, I guess I can't. This window here allows you to make adjustments to a raw file. This is Camera One. Sorry, this is Camera Raw, not Camera One. So Camera Raw allows you to not just make adjustments to one image. You could theoretically make adjustments to multiple images. It doesn't necessarily work on the copy and apply adjustments like Photoshop or like Capture One, sorry, but it does allow you to do quite a bit of things. So at the top, you've got a bunch of tools. So for example, you can zoom in. There's a hand tool. You can move around. We have white balance tools. We aren't really going to talk about that until next semester, honestly. Cropping. We have straighten tools. We have transform and a whole bunch of other things like that. So let me just and 0. Yep, there we go. I know for a fact for some reason this image did not record its proper orientation, so you can also rotate images, boop, like that if you wanted to, and go back the opposite way. I apologize if I'm making you dizzy. And then of course on the right we have a histogram with exposure warnings, so I don't know if you can see it or not, but I have a little bit of area that is slightly clipped in, I guess they're dandelions. So just like in Capture One, it'll show you red for overexposed areas. And then for underexposed areas, I'll have to adjust exposure to show you. It should start to show blue if I turn it on. There we go. It's the same idea. Let's just reset that. Boop. Now you can also double click on the control sliders and they'll reset. And by the way, that's the same thing in Capture One. Anywho, so just like in Capture One, you have an exposure adjustment. So if I needed to adjust exposure on this, you could. I don't need to because it is properly exposed. You have highlights and shadows, whites and blacks, and what that ultimately does is, just like in Capture One and High Dynamic Range, you can ultimately adjust certain points of the histogram. So if I did want to bring these clipped areas in, I could go to my highlights, and I can try bringing that back. And if it doesn't work, I can also go to my whites. There we go. Clarity, it's kind of like a form of sharpening in a way, and it does exactly what it sounds. It makes things clear, and a lot of people will use it, and a lot of people will overuse it, and you really just want to use it a little bit. Like I never go above 20, but giving something a little bit of clarity doesn't usually hurt. Vibrance and saturation will affect the color. You also have the ability to change your white balance here. If you, for example, shot in the wrong white balance, you can change it here. You do have a tonal curve, just like in Capture One as well. And then of course we can sharpen, we can convert to black and white here, and you have the similar colored channels, except you have a few extra weird ones like aquas and oranges, and purples, which is unusual, but hey, it works. Split toning, we're not going to really get into. You have lens correction options, and then of course you have weird effects if you want to vignette and things like that. You even have camera calibration settings, which is usually up to date. Presets if you want to save them, and snapshots is just like a ability to add history. Now, what you would do with this, like in Capture One, is you would just make sure that your exposure is optimum, because you have the most leeway with a raw file. It's good to come in here and adjust your exposure. So I would go in here and adjust my highlights and my whites, and I thought I did that for some reason. There we go. Until that information comes back if it was necessary. And a lot of people mess this up. They'll click done, and all that'll do is ultimately, there we go, it'll just write the file. Let me just move Photoshop for a sec. There we go. It'll just write the file to an XMP. So if I just go to this view for a second, you'll see there's my raw file, and there's the XMP file, and there's all my adjustments inside the XMP file. So now if I go ahead and open that with Photoshop, so I'll just go right-click Open With this time. It reads the XMP file, and my changes have been saved. If I want to open into Photoshop, I then have to click Open. And what I would do before I do that, though, is this little guy here, this kind of like link, will ultimately open into Photoshop with these settings. So it's going to add the Adobe RGB 1998 color space, it's going to leave it 8-bit, it's going to leave the file size, and it's going to leave the PPI or DPI. And I can click Open Image. And it's on the other screen, but there you go. Now I have my file, it's made, a few changes have been made, and I can work on it in Photoshop. That's Adobe Camera Raw, guys, and it's a good idea to know that it's there. And if you didn't know, Adobe Lightroom is actually ultimately based off of that program. So that's what that program does. Now, I'm going to show you guys in a different video, if I haven't already, how to go in and adjust things in, create Photoshop documents from a raw file in Capture One. But there you go. That is how we open up a raw file directly into Photoshop.